There's a lot here that we want to cover, especially when it comes to North Korea. And Axios reporting that the president, seems most interested in discussing military options on North Korea. And his rhetoric makes White House advisors nervous here. Is it fair to say that this situation should have and could have been settled by prior administrations?
Well, they possibly could have. North Korea is a difficult administration to deal with. Kim Jong-un is about as crazy as some other foreign leaders that we have, but our domestic leaders, in fact. But, I don't think that because the other previous presidents didn't solve the problem doesn't mean that it can't be solved diplomatically now, and it needs to be.
All right. Also making big headlines here, the New York Times report on how the FBI's Russia's investigation got started with George Papadopoulos there at a night at a London bar out drinking. Your takeaway from that?
Well, I think there's no question but that the Russians were involved in our elections. What they did result in the election of President Trump. Trump has backed off from his original proposal that said we had nothing to do with Russia. We have nothing to do with Russia. So now there's no collusion. There's a big difference between nothing to do with and no collusion. Collusion, you have to show a certain interaction by Trump. I think the Trump family has shown it with their meetings where they were eager to jump to the idea of having things on Hillary Clinton. And it's pretty clear, I think our intelligence officials have said that the Russians are who hacked the DNC and got the information, and now it's pretty clear that it went through Julian Assange, and that's where in WikiLeaks. And I think the president's moved the ball down the field, and he's moving it all the way down the field to where the point is at the last minute he's going to get an official to call a foul on Robert Mueller. He will no longer have been treated, quote unquote, fairly, and he'll fire Robert Mueller, and we'll have a constitutional crisis. And
yeah, let's take the ball down there. If that's the case, that the ball goes down there and Robert Mueller is fired here from this investigation, any plan in place? That's what if that happens?
Well, all I've heard is that the activists would take the streets, and they will, and they'll protest, and that's one thing. I think we need to have a stronger response. I'm not sure what it can be, and I've thought of what my response should be, and civil disobedience might be part of what it involves. I've talked to John Lewis about it. John Lewis is one of my mentors and gurus, and I said, what should we do? And he said about the people taking the streets, and if John Lewis takes to the streets, I'll be there with him.
Yeah, well, I couldn't help but notice one of your pinned tweets here in you saying, I'm fighting upstream. I've fought upstream my whole life. I'm proud to stand with my colleagues to introduce articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. That, along with Politico's report that the Democrats are divided over the impeachment debate in the party, that happens and the party manages to retake the House next year. Do you see the risks there if there is no bipartisan approval?
I think there will be. I think right now the Republicans are resisting it because they don't want to lose their power and they don't want to lose Trump. But if they lose the House, I think they'll be happy to lose Trump. Trump is a vehicle for them, just as Trump is a vehicle for the religious right. The evangelical Christians know he's not an evangelical Christian or a follower of Jesus. He doesn't believe in what you do unto the least of thee and do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, and run the money changers out of the temple and the camel and the needle. He's got none of that stuff. Yeah. He is all about himself. Well,
you've been here on our air on MSNBC on this show talking about at least one Republican being on board as far as impeachment there. Any more that could be added to that?
I don't think so. There was one that a gentleman who couldn't add himself publicly but thought about it. There are a few others who've thought about it. A lot of them have drunk the Kool-Aid. I mean, they got a package and they passed it around there in the caucus room, and they did seconds, I think.
All right, Congressman Steve Cohen, I thank you for being with us and your time. We appreciate it.
You're welcome, Francis. I love seeing you on the Today Show.
Appreciate it.